Hi, everyone, and thank you for joining in for today. This is Denise with Native Healthcare Center, a nonprofit that focuses on working with our Indigenous and Native American community, and as well just our community that loves to support all mental well-being and physical mental health. So today we are excited to bring in Christine West talking about our mental well-being and am I okay? Which sometimes I don't feel okay or sometimes we're like, hey, so and so's been acting funny. And knowing kind of like what are the signs, what are the things they should be looking for is an important thing to bring into our awareness. So I definitely want to have our presenter just give you some insight. I hope this is fruitful for you. Take some notes, stop the recording, take it at your pace, and I hope you enjoy our conversation today.
Yes, thank you. Thank you, Denise. I am really flattered and excited for the invitation because I know how much, looking at mental wellness, mental fitness, mental health in the workplace, and because sometimes it has a negative stigma of saying something such as, hey, I need some help, I need some extra support. And I'm curious, what has been your experience, whether it's your current employer or past employers with that?
Some people just don't know what's been changing around them, or they feel in different like routine or their energy levels. Sometimes their sleep has been affected. And they're like, but
Uh-huh.
I don't know why, or I'm starting to feel anxious in public and I just don't know why. And so sometimes it that I don't know why tends to be a little bit scary, a little bit overwhelming, and it's like, let's get into this.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that, so often that, there are, folks that come into, our workplace and maybe they are going through something and they don't know how to understand themselves well enough or even know the difference between something such as, well, your example, I didn't sleep so good. Now there's one, maybe there's one night occurrence that I didn't sleep so good, and
Mhm,
then maybe I have anxiety, and or maybe I don't feel good, or maybe I'm off that day.
mhm,
But what I'm speaking of is that that's perfectly normal. But I'm speaking of knowing when something is really off.
mhm.
And so that I'm just curious because I like to be interactive. And Jenny, thanks for joining us. If you're willing to put on your camera, that would be delightful if you're willing to. It's and I would just love, my style is very interactive. And Jenny, if you're willing to have yourself off mute, I'm just curious from your perspective, if you're not willing to, unmute, at least put in the chat box, for you, what stigmas around mental health, mental wellness, mental fitness have you experienced?
Oh,
And we'll
man.
just give a moment if Jenny's willing.
Hi, I'm sorry, I can't put the camera on
It's
because I'm
okay.
in a
Okay.
patient care area, but I think the only stigma could be probably labeling someone with a mental health.
You're muffled.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Can you hear me better?
Yes, thank you.
It would be probably a stigma of labeling somebody with a mental health problem.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And that's my point, is that from my point of view, and I'm just going to put this out there, I understand and I respect the DSM, but from my point of view, not everything needs to be put in a box as labeled as a treatment plan. From my point of view, and this is where the presentation is going to go, is more about how to be the human side, not the side of sit in front of me or sit in front of your therapist and then put you in some type of container and then treat you. I'm looking at it from a view of, in Denise's example, of I didn't sleep good and I have anxiety and things are going on. There could be many different reasons behind that, which we can get into a little bit deeper here. And so thank you for your participation. So let's go, and hey, thank you for another participant. Great. So let's make sure that we, oh, why won't, oh, wait, you see my slide move? Did my slide move? Okay, perfect. Okay, so my question for everyone, and this is a very important question to be honest about, and this is for everyone that's listening to me live and the people who listen to this on the recording. The question is, does life happen for you or to you?
I would take it as life happens for me.
Okay, great. Um, Yulette and Jenny, how about you both?
I agree. Life happens for me, not to me, for me.
Great. Jenny, how about yourself?
For me.
Excellent. Yay. Yay. You all won a prize. Okay, so let's just dive into this concept. The reason why I asked the question is because it produces a different mental attitude if you're looking at life happens to you. I get there's things that are unpleasant. I get that there's things that we wish didn't happen in our lives. But if your attitude is that it happened to me, it puts you in the powerless position. It puts you in the position of more victimization. It puts you in the position of you did something to me. On the flip side, if life is happening for you, really for you, it puts you in your power position that you recognize that everything in life is to be cherished, and it's about how you respond to it. So I'm just going to speak of something that could be viewed as horribly awful. I understand that we all have wounds. I understand that there is trauma. I'm not dismissing that. But there comes a point in our lives where we need to ask ourselves, how long am I going to carry this? How long am I going to have that narrative? So, some examples. If, and I'm just going to give a range of examples, is have you ever had that friend or maybe yourself at a time that you went through a horrible marriage or a horrible relationship? And the story continues over and over and over about what he or she did to you. Anybody can relate to that. You can unmute and just, if you can't relate to that example, I'll give others. Is that an example no one can relate to?
Very relatable. It's like, what do you
Okay, okay.
think about it? How long is it going to go on for?
Okay, so when we are in the position of telling we're with our friends and we or our family members or our coworkers about we're going to social hour or networking hour and we're telling the story about what he or she did over and over and over and over, that's giving your power away. And I mean this wholeheartedly. And I'm not saying the experience that I've gone through heartbreak. I've gone through my own versions of relationships that didn't work out or friendships that weren't exactly what I wanted. Or the person, the friend, or my beloved that I really was attracted to all of a sudden did some type of behavior that was unappealing to me, or some family member did something that really agitates me. And so the question is, how are you telling the story? So I'm going to give you an example. So if I was to tell my story, and this is how a flip, the question, does life happen for you or to you? So in my particular story, I came into this world and I had emotionally immature parents. And so when their ways of functioning and how their relationship, they didn't understand emotions, the way they communicated, the way that they yelled, screamed, things were very loud. And this was very harsh on my nervous system. And in my first career, I can remember that I would rinse and repeat some of these behaviors that I learned. But yet, until if I was telling a story and saying something such as, well, my mom did this, my mom behaved this way, this is why I can't, this is why I can't do this, this is why I behave the way I do, because she did blah, 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 blah. There was a time where I used to tell some version of that story. Now, the way that I look at it and say, wow, what an opportunity that I was born into emotionally immature parents that didn't have any baseline for emotions or mental well-being and or really being able to communicate well. And they taught me how far I can grow. So it's not really about the circumstances I was born into. It's really about what I do with the story and what I do with that information. So it's a little different when we literally flip the story. So another example could be the bad boss at work. I've heard this story. This is a very common story in workplaces. My boss is a narcissist. My boss is horrible. My boss limits me. It's my boss's fault that I couldn't get that promotion. It's my boss's fault that how things happen. Or I have a great opportunity to make some decisions for myself about how I will conduct myself, how I will ask for support or identify that, hey, something seems off. I don't need to participate in this bad behavior. I don't need to argue. I don't need to continue to manifest it and tell everybody in the world that will listen to my story. I have a horrible boss, and that's why I can't have advancement. So, what's your thoughts on this? Anyone? I know I'm giving you some things to think about. Just pipe in.
My thoughts are, and I'm doing multitasking over here, so I may have to come off the line. But my thoughts are based upon the example that you have given is that some people don't want to own up to the responsibility of being an adult. And because you don't want to own up to the responsibility of being an adult, you always want to shift the blame to somebody else, which helps me, the person, to say, okay, I'm not responsible, which is immature, and that person needs to grow. So one of the things that we need to do in our interaction with one another is to help people to take ownership of the things that they do or don't do, even if it is negative or a positive situation, so that they can be responsible and grow. So I think that's what you said. But again, I've kind of multitasking, so I hope I understood the question right. So
You
I'm
did.
going to mute.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. That's
Okay.
spot on. It's spot on. I'm inviting you. I'm inviting you to be responsible and how it shifts your reality.
And I
It
agree with Dr. McCullough on there as well. I think whenever you rephrased it at the back, like, oh, so the reason you're not advancing is because your boss sucks. Like, um, so it kind of like brings it back, like, oh, have I really been saying my story that way? That's like the reason I haven't moved forward, the reason I haven't gotten this, really, because of this person that's outside of me.
yeah. Yeah. That's the point. Is that's the way direction we're going. I'm inviting you to take responsibility and take responsibility for, are you okay? And this is about an internal journey. I'm not saying don't seek support from other people, but I'm just inviting you to pay attention to the stories that you're sharing and what side of the coin you're on. Am I telling a story that life is happening to me or for me? Because we can have all kinds of things in our today's world as far as politics, no matter what side of the fence you're on, it doesn't matter to me. Well, the president, the Congress, our families, our boss sucks, whatever it may be, the economy. It's just an invitation to identify the stories you're sharing. Hey, come on. Come on. Oh, okay. Whoops. Okay. So just remember your mind is your greatest asset. Your greatest asset. So our minds, think of it as you have this projector that comes from inside of you. So whatever you're experiencing outside your movie screen is coming from inside of you. So, for example, something else people can relate to, everybody can relate to. You're running late to get to that important meeting. You're agitated and you get stopped by every street light. And you're agitated. That slow driver pulls in front of you. And you're agitated because you're looking at the clock. You're looking at your phone. You're looking and saying, oh, you're blaming everybody outside of you. You're really, but the thing is that I'm not going to say you should have left earlier. I'm not going to say that. But the point is that you have the facilities to decide how you respond to this. I've sat at that same scenario where I've started laughing at myself of giving you that example because I know everybody can relate to it, is realizing, why am I getting worked up? Why am I trying to force something? What am I getting out of this movie? It's just a simple question. And I'm just inviting you all to begin to look at it that way. If you really want life to happen for you, not to you. Does the driver that got in front of you, hey, you know what? That's a really blessing. They just saved me time from getting a ticket. They are a blessing that they just saved me time from getting in an accident. That's really cool. It's just a different shift. What do you feed your mind? Your emotions feed those thoughts, which is all energy. And so are you feeding your mind, that crappy scenario? So it's really up to you. And I'm just looking, I see there's some comments in there. Okay, go around probably. Okay. Go around probably run a red light, but for especially if the phone, I do try to tell myself I was probably safe from getting an accident. Awesome, awesome, awesome. It is true. It is true. But everybody can relate to these scenarios. And so it's just holding that thought about, what am I doing? How am I contributing to this?
Mhm. And Christine, can you tell me, like, for a person that maybe has projected a lot of negativity over a long period of time, how would we start changing some of that projection that we're having towards our outside world? Like that negative, like, I'm negative Nancy, and that's just how I am.
Well, great question. And part of it, from my point of view, is you have to recognize it within yourself. You have to get sick of yourself. You have to get sick of your own attitude. And I mean that sincerely, because I'm just going to go into, some models that everybody's probably very familiar with. The alcoholic's model. Okay? The alcoholic doesn't have a problem with his drinking, everybody else does. So the negative person doesn't have a problem with their attitude, everybody else does. The alcoholic doesn't change until the alcoholic comes to that contemplation to say, this isn't working. I've done enough damage. I've hurt my family. I've hurt myself with my employment. I've hurt my money. I've hurt whatever I've hurt. It's the same thing with negative Nancy. It's the more that, from my view, we can sit there and have this attitude that says, well, I told them they have a horrible attitude. I told them that their performance needs to get better. Well, telling somebody and them acknowledging it and digesting it is something different. So from my point of view, here's something that I would say that how I would handle it and try this on. If somebody's really negative and they're complaining, I always ask those people in my life, how is this working out for you? Because then I'm not judging them. I'm just asking the question. And it usually sparks a dialogue that they usually come back and say something such as, it's not. And then if they say that, then it's usually a dialogue that says, okay, are you gonna continue down this path, or are you gonna choose something different? It's not me getting into that codependency trying to rescue them. But it's also being in my power, if it's a friend or a family member, somebody or a coworker, to say something such as something respectful. Hey, listen, we're here to work on this particular project, and I understand that you may have different attitudes, but either way, we still have to get the work done. So it's just learning that you don't have to get sucked into it. Again, it's really your choice. Okay. Next slide. Oh, okay. So just remember in this slide, your mind here at our conscious level. I mean, I hear different, statistics about this. So let's just agree for this conversation that, our conscious part of our mind is 5% of things. And our subconscious is the other 95%. Whether it's 95, 97, 90, it doesn't matter. The point is that the subconscious is actually running the show. And the thing is about all of us is that when, no matter how you were raised, and I give an example of how I was raised, is that sure, by age 7, we have our little person identity because we're sucking everything up. We're a sponge. And we learn the emotional patterns, we learn the autopilot habits, routines, beliefs, values, our traumas, our wounds, our things that are part of our trainings, our sensory input, our identity to who we are. Now, environment definitely shifts that, but at the same time, if you think about, I mean, I know everybody probably to some version of this. When I was a young person, I used to get into these little silly fights with other kids at school and say, well, my mommy and daddy are right. Your mommy and daddy are wrong. And this would go back and forth because that's immaturity, because you're sticking up for, the beliefs, the family system. And so that family system, we believe so strongly that it's right. Our ego identity, which is at the conscious level of us, sits there and says, no, I'm right, you're wrong. It's only through emotional maturity that we start to learn and say, I question this. Like back to the negative Nancy. If I'm in a space where, so for example, in my evolution, and I'm just suggesting you look at your own evolution, habits that when I was, a teenager that worked with other kids or my neighborhood, but then I went to college, and those same attitudes did not work in a different environment because kids were raised differently than me. They weren't raised where I was raised, where there was parents that were screaming and yelling and everything else, and it was really crazy. And I thought that's how you communicated because that was norm. That was normal. But to other people, that was insane and that was not acceptable behavior. And it took a little while to figure out why is this not acceptable behavior. And I'm being 100%, forthright with everybody because we have these things and how we solve problems with people in our lives, and how do we solve things with ourselves. I can remember, in my first career, I was super intelligent, always IQ up there. I can, when it came to things such as logic, I could solve things. But as soon as it got into some type of human challenge, it was, wait a minute, it's them. They're horrible. I'm not. I did everything. Okay, I blew up the bridge. It was never, it was like they deserved me to blow up the bridge. It takes responsibility to recognize if I was me back in my first career, I would look at things from a view that says, oh, I need to work this out with this person. I need to move them forward to get them on my idea. So part of being mentally fit and mentally well, am I okay? It also takes an awareness to ourselves. It takes an awareness to understand that there's many different ways to conduct ourselves. And I'm not here to share with you that I'm the end all be all because I'm not, because I'm constantly learning myself. And human beings are constantly changing. And we can all change. And I just want to make sure there's no, oh, I see some questions. Yes, very true. Okay, 100%. Great. Yeah, so it's really about identifying where you're at. So, for example, for me, because I no longer live in the same area that I was raised in, when people meet me and they say, "Oh my goodness, the way that you communicate, the way you conduct yourself, your family must have, did this and this and this," and I have to say to them humbly, "No, no." They don't have the same type of belief system. They would not be so open to talk about these things. They would they'd want to sweep everything under the rug and not talk about it. They would totally avoid everything. So it's not to say that I'm not saying that they're wrong. All I'm saying is that's what they've normalized. And I have normalized something different, which is a different routine, a different type of way of showing up in the world. And I just invite you to, how are you showing up? And I'm just curious, are these examples hitting home with folks?
They definitely are. I think now being in a different level of like education and my belief systems and how far it's come from my family, people are like, "Oh, well, you think you're really fancy now, or you really think you're this now," or um, and so then it comes like a cultural identity of like, "Oh, well, you don't act like the rest of us," and I'm like, "What is?" And not that I feel any better than y'all. I don't know why you see me that way. It's just what I believe.
Yeah, and it's something that, thank you for sharing that, Denise, because it's also something else at our nervous system. All this stuff, these patterns and what we're comfortable with gets stored there. So, for example, I grew up in Chicago, and and I live in Alaska today. When I first moved to Alaska, things that I was comfortable with came from my upbringing. But as I look at some of the neighborhoods that once upon a time were very comfortable because of uh, Chicago being what was my norm, that now like, no, 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 those are bad neighborhoods, and my nervous system's no longer comfortable there because it shows me how I've grown. Or I'm no longer comfortable around people who don't want to, communicate. people that want to just scream, yell. The environment I was raised in is no longer comfortable, which tells me I've outgrown it. It's not a better than. From my view, it's I've outgrown this. It's no longer serves where I'm going, if that makes sense for people. Okay. Okay, come on. Come on, slide. Oh, here we go. So since I started talking about patterns and our mindset and the things that sit in subconscious, there's a dangerous pattern, and it's the patterns we can't see. And something that many, many people do, and I'll just give you a true visual, is I see many of my clients that come to me, is they they're making decisions. They're trying to read the label of the bottle from inside the bottle. They're sitting inside the bottle and they're trying to read the label. You can't do that because they can't see their patterns. They can't see their blind spots. They can't see. So, for example, it sounds like this. The business leader, like, for example, I've had many mental health facilities for the business side come to me. And the leader says to me something such as, my team is really great with their patients, but together they're just really awful. They're really awful and they don't communicate and this and this. And then I asked the leader, what are you doing or not doing? And she says, well, I've done everything, which then tells me that leader cannot see how they're contributing. They're not seeing how their leadership. Most leaders would never say something such as, well, I realize that I'm the leader, so my leadership is ineffective. Most leaders will never talk that way. That's not really what they would say. They would say something such as, my team has this bad behavior. My team is getting toxic. It's somebody else out there. So it goes back to my point. Life is happening to you, not for you. So my point is that if we're sitting inside the bottle trying to see how we're contributing to things in life that we don't want to experience, that's a key. Am I okay? That's a key to say, wait a minute, this is beyond me. Maybe I need some assistance to see myself. If I want something to shift, if I want something to change, I need to make the inner change. That's a formula that I know is guaranteed. It's guaranteed if I start to do the inner work and if I start showing up differently, the people around me and the world starts shifting. That's a promise. And I say it again, and I'm being recorded. It's a shift that will automatically happen. Want to hear some thoughts, or is there any questions? Just looking in the chat box here. Nope.
Just thank you for that. I think that's very powerful of sometimes we don't see in our own patterns, and just being in like the nonprofit space and like organizational space where you're dealing with multiple individuals, multiple identities. It's always easy to say, well, this person, this person, this person. And sometimes we just get caught up in what we always consider like the politics of how things are going. um,
Yes.
and so, but it's exhausting. It leads us to burnout because what it feels like, nothing's working for me.
Yes. So that's where, if we can't see and things aren't working, if we don't like our outer world, and that could be something as simple as, hey, the people at work are just not responding to me the way that I want them to, or this feels icky. Or when I go home, my spouse is no longer loving towards me. I'm inviting folks to look at it from a different point of view of, what am I doing? What am I doing? Maybe you're the person that you have, things that aren't going so great at work, and then you're coming home at the dinner table and then you're reliving it, and your spouse is sitting there saying, this is pretty crappy. I don't want to hear about this again. This is all we talk about. And so they may not say that because not everybody is as forthright. So it's something to just consider, because these are dangerous patterns. So the danger is really these patterns that we normalize since childhood. And those are sitting in our blind spots. And this is stuff where, I've thought about this because I have studied, I've experienced, I have looked at toxic workplaces, I've looked at emotional immaturity, I've looked at things from a perspective to say, what is going on that somebody can't see something? Why does a person who's emotionally avoidant, whether it's in personal life, work life, why can't they see that this is why can't they move forward? Why are they so resistant to having this conversation? And the answer that I have come up with is because they've normalized it. It's so sitting at the subconscious, on their nervous system, sitting there saying, this is the way we do things. And there's so many people around me telling me this is what we do. This is normal. This is normal to cut people out of my life that don't agree with me. This is normal to, as soon as somebody, like, there's a trigger inside of me, that is their fault. It's normal that somebody says something that I don't like, or I interpret that I don't like, that it's their fault and they're rude. I didn't do anything. I'm perfect, they're wrong. I'm not saying people verbally say that like that, but they think that some down inside of us. And so all I'm asking you to really examine is, where deep rooted inside of yourself, how do you set boundaries? How are you communicating? What do you accept or not accept in your relationships, whether it's personal or at work? Are you the person, something so simple as going to the grocery store, and you see that person in line in back of you that has one item, and your shopping cart is filled with, about 100 items? Are you the person that you just say, no, I'm in a hurry? Or are you the person that says, here, why don't you go in front of me? You only got one item. And I'm giving that simple example of human behavior because it's the way we do things. Are you the person, I was here first? Are you the person who fights in the Costco parking lot as far as, oh, well, that was my parking space? Or you're just like, oh, well, I don't have time for this. How we face conflict, how we love, how we fight, how we play is all patterns, what we label as healthy. So in order to say, am I okay, I have to take the position of responsibility. Any comments on that? I know I'm getting passionate.
No, the Costco parking lot is too relatable. It's like, I got here first. I've been waiting, and then somebody else cuts you off.
But the point is that I'm asking you to question, what have you normalized? Because it may not be normal in somebody else's reality. You can go to, and I'll give you an example. There was one time, I remember, I went to a bookkeeping service, and I brought all my books, and this person was really mean to me. And see, I'm saying to me, and and he scolded me, and he says, I'm the most unorganized person in the world. And he said he didn't want to work with me. And then I took the same books to a different bookkeeping service, didn't change anything. And they said to me, you're the most organized person we've ever dealt with. The point is, me saying that is that externally nothing changed. Everybody sees what's normal, what they label something as. So all my invitation to you all is, What is your norm and where did it come from and what are you putting meaning on? I look at that first bookkeeper today as great. He did me an awesome favor because him and I really wouldn't jive anyways. Any comments on anything I've said so far? I know there's a comment in the chat. That's hard seeing what we have normalized is, yeah, it's not all normal outside of it. Yeah, and see, this is an area, Denise, that there's a lot of folks in my practice of a lot of the work that I'm doing is really helping people empirically see themselves in what's running the show because it's something that it's not so easy. That's why I give the example. If you're sitting inside the jar, you cannot read the label. It's impossible. It's really impossible.
My my thoughts are sometimes sometimes things are normalized based upon your upbringing, your spiritual values,
Yep.
and the experiences that you have in life.
Yep.
So I can't say that, I'm normalized by a lot of things, the events and situations that you said, examples that you gave. I can react differently depending on whether I'm rushed, whether I have time, whether I want to do, because I will always oftentimes give a person who has less groceries than me an opportunity to get in front of me. But if I'm stressed and I know I need to have deadlines to meet, I can't do that because I know I have to look out for what my priorities are at that time. So when I begin to listen at you and you talk about, how do we normalize stuff? I mean, I guess it's just being aware of the fact that, am I doing this because of, and if I am doing this because of, why? And is that a good space to be in, or is it not a good space to be in? So I just I'm kind of all over the place as I heard you talk because I can't fit into one particular looking in the bottle and looking outside and reading it, because sometimes at the bottle you can read one word, you can't read all of them, but you may be able to read one word, but when you're outside, yes, most definitely, you can
Yep.
see more things clearly. But I just can't. That's my best. Comments to what I've heard and what you've said. And I think they're wonderful for us to make sure that we are just beginning to have those mental conversations with ourselves about what that normality is and how we begin to interact with that normality.
That's my point. Just awareness to how you have created normal and what it came from. And when somebody else has a different normal, how do you deal with that? That's more of what my point is. So thank you for your comments. I am challenged. Okay. So next slide here, because some of these norms show up, they're disguised as, business cultural expectations, family traditions, our love language, whatever that may be. This is what me and my friends do. This is how me and my family behave. At our workplace, this is what we do. It's something that all I'm encouraging is look at where things came from, because it's going to give you a pathway into, well, is this okay anymore? Because when your nervous system is flaring up and you have that anxiety, sometimes, sometimes the anxiety is not even ours. It's just something we're picking up, that energy from around us, that there's too many people. Or maybe you're sitting on social media. Maybe you're flipping your phone. Maybe you're watching too much TV. Maybe you need to be aware of the type of music you're listening to, the type of people, what are they talking about? For example, if you're the kind of person, I'm not this kind of person, but I've known these people that the first thing they do when they get out of bed, they turn on the news, they get themselves worked up, they get stressed out, they carry it through the day, they have that high cortisol. It affects their attitude. I've seen people that they're one person and they have 5 TVs on as they're working at home, having the news, different news outlets. And then they're automatically on social media yelling at everybody that they're wrong, that no other viewpoint is accepted. All I'm suggesting is look at yourself if you're truly on the side of life happens for me, and question your norms, because that gives an insight to, am I okay? Because if you're not okay, it's something about what, as I've been leading to, is we need to be aware of where our central nervous system is at. Pay attention to, hey, I'm around, that was a really fun event. Or if your spiritual beliefs, you go to, whether it's church or a spiritual center, or you're into different practices, say, I'm just going to say like yoga or Pilates, or does that make you feel good? It's also what is comfortable with what we're used to and what you have outgrown. Just trying to simplify it for everyone. So here's something that many people I have found in the workplace, that a lot of people do things, and what this has to do with being okay is they have this pattern, again, patterns sit on the central nervous system, and they're emotional patterns, and then they show up at how we feel. So the fear of missing out, having blurred boundaries, or shying away from difficult conversations, or the fear of letting your clients down, or the fear of letting your coworker down. So I'm looking at the chat box here. Okay, have to leave early. So much good. I am number one. It's a working process. Absolutely. We all are. We all are a working in progress here. Good job. It's something to just consider, what are your patterns? And I'm not saying drive yourself nuts to sit there and say, oh my God, what am I doing? What, you're not a robot. It's also asking questions such as, why is it that in this scenario, I really am so evolved in with these kinds of people in this scenario, but with these kinds of people, I don't do so good. What is going on? What is off in me when I'm interacting with these kinds of people? And it could be anything from, oh, um, I'm the one who's getting a little jealous. I'm the one that feels inadequate. I'm the one that is, they're participating in things that previous versions of me used to participate in, and I'm just not okay with anymore. Whatever the range is, but it's to figure out, am I okay, is to really have that honest conversation, but it has to come from lighting up one's own emotions and paying attention to whether it's anxiety, fear, joy, where, hey, these people are joy to be around. I love being around their presence. Why is it that my crappy boss that I label as crappy, what's going on? Why am I blaming him or her? Why is it their fault? Why am I shrinking down? What am I afraid of? It's just asking some questions. So something that here's something as looking at, an example that I put in here, because this is very common, that about communication, how people show up. And really hear me when I'm saying this. Unhealthy people can be rude. Unhealthy people can be rude. Rudeness is a weak person's imitation of strength. So maybe that crappy boss, what you're irritated by is an imitation of strength. And instead of looking at that person and saying, oh, they're crappy, maybe shift and say, I have some compassion. and shift things. Because a confident, secure person will always set a boundary without making other people feel small and insignificant. So if you start looking at the crappy situations or even in oneself to say, where am I being unhealthy? Unhealthy can show up in many different forms. Where am I being the rude person? I'm not saying fill in the blank, whatever you want the label to be, but where am I having imitation of strength? Where am I being not as showing up as good as I can? Because a confident, secure person would say something such as, that's not my area. I'm willing to learn. Let's figure out a solution together. Let's figure this out. Instead of, coming in that overbearingness and saying, well, this is the way I see it. Well, we all see it a certain way. But how do you know if you're okay? It's okay to say to somebody, such as that boss that you label as crappy, is, hey, you know what? I really want to come to you and see if we can figure out solutions to, fill in the blank. How do you foresee that we do this? That's being confident. It's not yelling and screaming. They're still the boss. It's respecting where they're at, if that makes sense for folks. So move. Oh, I'm sorry. Now I'm flipping things. So the thing is, folks, is we all show up differently when we choose to heal, when we choose to own our own patterns. You really do show up differently. But again, it's identifying within yourself, am I okay? Am I okay with how I'm showing up? Am I okay being negative Nancy? Am I okay with the scenarios of my place in life? Am I okay with how my workplace does things? And if I'm not okay, how can I create positive change to get people on board without causing a rift of everybody feeling insecure and me being the rude one saying things such as, well, you're all wrong, we have to do it this way because my way is best. How do we get people on board of finding out I need to heal? Maybe everybody in this environment has normalized this and they just don't have the eyes to see, but I'm going to choose to be healthy and heal these patterns. And I'm going to choose to be more positive and get people on board with positive change, whatever it may be. So your history, folks, may help you to understand your patterns, and that's a given. But we need to challenge what we label as normal and what we feel is normal. We really, really do. I've seen where people show up and they're used to being in that place of, this is my normal. This is how my day goes. This is how my day goes. They don't realize that they can choose something differently. They don't have to have the same mental attitudes. You can choose to be happy. You can choose to be healthy. You can choose to heal your own body. If you go around saying things such as, well, I have ADHD, that's why I can't focus. Okay, great. I choose to focus regardless of that somebody told me I have ADHD. I choose to reduce sugar in my diet. I choose to stop looking at my phone and getting distracted by social media, or I choose to tell coworkers, listen, can we schedule some time to talk about this because I need to finish this. I choose. So it's really looking at what do you see as normal. And so, folks, his invitation, the pen that writes your future is in your decisions. It's all a decision to say that I want to be better than I was yesterday, to break unhealthy, unproductive, or comfort zone patterns. It's really a choice. It's a decision. And so here's an example that I just want to really bring home, is an example that's really normal in our culture everywhere. If you hear be the bigger person, and I've heard this in my life, and I've heard lots of other clients tell me this, I want you to own that you're being told to dismiss your feelings. And that's why so many people suppress things. And that's why, hey, be the bigger person. You're not allowed to share that that doesn't feel right for me. I'm not saying scream and yell and tell people they're wrong and wrong people, but staying silent sometimes in a healthy way only allows the problems in our world to persist by keeping the peace. So it's okay to say to our boss or our people around us, friends, family, a loved one, I know you meant well by saying, hey, let's be peaceful, but I'm allowed to stand up and respect myself as, instead of being labeled as difficult, because I don't see this as okay. This doesn't sit well with me. It doesn't sit well with me that everybody's negative and they just want to complain. It doesn't sit well with me that everything's really loud instead of coming up with solutions. It doesn't sit well with me. I understand your view that I'm difficult, but I need you to respect that I have something to say because I'm not okay with this. So my final thoughts on this, really my final thoughts, what got you here, folks, won't get you to where you want to be. And I have a freebie gift for all of you. If you scan that, and it's an emotional intelligence communication, it's a 1 page, and it really will open you up to just give you some tips and tools to begin to see your world of how you can respond and understand yourself and the others around you with emotional intelligence. And is there any questions, comments?
Thank you so much for today's conversation. Sometimes we just go on our daily routine, day-to-day life, not recognizing our patterns. um, and I think it just reflects really strongly with me this week for sure in my home setting and recognizing like, oh, it's why is this person energy like making me feel some type of way? So I definitely had to find some days where I was self-caring like hardcore to find myself back at a reset because I was like, I can't function with that energy affecting me like that. But I'm the one that's choosing to stay in it. So I was like, I need to find a way to help myself out.
Yeah, that's really great awareness. It's something that I recognize all of us, and I go through this with myself when, whatever the pattern is, whether the pattern is difficulty, whether the pattern is lack, whether the pattern is overindulgence, or the pattern is why am I all of a sudden attracted to eating uh, like junk food? Why am I in this pattern? What am I masking? Whatever it may be. And I'm just looking at any comments. Thank you for participating. I have to go. Thank you so much. It's wonderful. Yeah, this was wonderful. I'm so happy that and honored. I'm going to stop my share and thank you. I'm also going to put in the chat a few things just to mention. If folks are interested in, I did put, like, if you didn't get the scan code, I put the free gift link. I also put my calendar in, and then also next week on February 27th, I am hosting my own event, which is it's called Freedom to Express. It's all about communication. It's about words that win, and the investment for that is it's a $44 workshop, and I'm putting the information in the chat. So that's on the 27th of February, and that's at noon my time. So I believe that's you're in Central Time, or yeah, so 3 o'clock Central Time.
Perfect. And I'll save the information here from today's workshop. Make
Yeah.
sure I get it back out to our participants that came on board today. So let me put it in my notes so I can save keep. But thank you so much, Christine. It's a pleasure and it was an honor that we were able to connect. And I find that the world connects me to exactly what needs to be in our space at this time. So I appreciate you and your time, your energy, and everything that you've poured into us today. And I know that it's going to be beneficial for whoever's listening. And I can definitely be like, I'm not sure if it's good or bad, but I'm like, this person needs to hear. I'm be like, but here's the link whenever you're
I
ready.
agree. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Yulette. Thank you for your
I
participation.
agree. Thank
It
you.
was, yeah, it was a pleasure.